This is a quick video to show how Home Assistant can be used to control a Q-SYS DSP via Node-RED. All right, so this video assumes that you already have Node-RED installed somewhere, either within your Home Assistant IO operating system as an add-on or separately with the Node-RED or the Home Assistant WebSocket installed within Node-RED and linked that way. First thing you're going to do is in Home Assistant, we'll create a control that's used to send a value, a button press, something like that, through Node-RED into Q-SYS. So we're going to come into Devices and Services. We're going to come over to Helpers. I'm going to create a helper, and I'm just going to create a number. I'm going to call it fader. Create an icon. Don't think it really matters. Oh yeah, volume, that's right. And then 0 to 100, I'm going to be using this to set the position of a control within Q-SYS. And I'll be in Node-RED changing this from 0 to 1 as a float. All right, we'll create. All right, so we have this basically imaginary control, a virtual control within Home Assistant that's not tied to any particular device that you have linked into Home Assistant. Then over in, so here in Home Assistant, if you've installed it in House.io, you can access Node-RED directly here. I'm not going to do that though. I'm going to access it just via the 1880 port in a separate tab. But before we do that real quick, I've created a Q-SYS dashboard. I'm going to come in here to Q-SYS dashboard, new section. I'm going to just do the entities card, wipe out some of these entities, and I'm going to look for that fader. So adding the fader entity, save, and done. So now we have a way to actually set a volume control. Now, unfortunately, Home Assistant doesn't update the value until you release. So it's an on, I think it's on change is kind of the JavaScript equivalent to that. Haven't figured out a way around that yet. All right, so in Node-RED, and this is something I've already pre-built and we'll share. This is my TCP connection to Node-RED on the port 1710. I think it's called the QRC protocol. Let me see here. Yeah, QRC protocol that uses JSON. All right, but back to Node-RED. Using the QRC protocol, and that's the port 1710. I'll get into a few more of these other objects here in just a minute, but the first thing we're going to do is drag in an event state node, and this is something that was added based on you already having the Home Assistant WebSocket installed. So you can just do search WebSocket and Node-RED contrib as Home Assistant WebSocket. That is what all these modules are from. So I've got state changed all entities, but I want to actually narrow this down to just that fader entity. So I've got the fader, and we don't really need to modify anything else here. Next thing we need to do is, I'll show you what the output of that fader is. So I'm going to put a debug node in. This just shows whatever the data is that's being passed from node to node. I've got this little tab extended, which allows us to see it in the debug window. And I'm going to deploy that. I like to keep it on modified nodes only, so it doesn't interrupt the rest of the Node-RED instance. So I've got my phone right here, and you can see I've got that fader going on. If I change the value of that fader, oops, I lost that here. Open that up. You see I've set it to 51, I've set it to 78, so on and so forth. So a string is coming through with that value. What I'm going to do is drop in a function node that allows us to take that value and format it correctly to be sent over to Q-SYS. I'm just going to call this And here's something I've pre-written this code. Copy in. I'll explain a little bit what's going on here. So value is a variable that I'm creating within this function that's bringing in the message.payload, which is the actual data that's coming off of this state changed node. And I'm dividing it by 100. So I take that 0 to 100 and I take it down to 0 to 1. And then let's see here. I am controlling I'm going to rewrite this a little bit. I'm controlling a component within Q-SYS called node red gain and then 1. So I'm going to just type that in here, node red gain 1, and change this to component. All right, so now the input, so this is the JSON object that Q-SYS is looking for, and it's going to be controlling component called node red gain 1. Now within Q-SYS, you need to make sure that that component is script access for external is enabled. I think I've just turned on all script access for this one. So name is component. I've defined the component as node red gain 1, and then we're going to be controlling the gain property, and we're going to be controlling the gain position. I find that to be kind of the easiest when dealing with these 0 to 100 values or ranges to keep things to where they make sense. All right, so, and then what happens is message.payload is changed from just this number to this whole object, and then at the end of the function, it returns the message, which will spit it out the end. So if we look at this now, I'm going to move this debug node over to format for Q-SYS. And if I adjust the level on the dashboard, we are now going to get a JSON object with these parameters, node red gain 1, controls, and gain, and then the position is 0.64. And again, position is a 0 to 1 value, so that's going to set that position on that control. Now we need to be able to get this data connected from this format for Q-SYS over to the actual TCP connection here. So I'm going to use a link. Stand by. This instance of Node-RED is acting a little funny right now. Reload that page. Link. This is going to be a link out. I just find this to be kind of the cleanest way. I'm going to be tying this to here, and then this is basically like an invisible wire to keep things a little bit more organized into here. All right, so what's happening here is this JSON object will be passed to this stringify, which takes the JSON object and turns it into a JSON string, which is what Q-SYS is looking for. And then that is sent. I think I'm using a termination command or a termination character as well, appending that to the end of the string, sending that to Q-SYS, and then we'll see a response from Q-SYS here. So with this all in place, we should see a good response. So if I set the value, this came back from Q-SYS, and it says result true. And this was the actual message that was sent. Node red gain 1. True indicates that there is an object or a component within node red gain 1, and we were able to properly set the value. If we take this over to, let me see here. I think I can do it that way. User control interfaces, test UI. I think this is what I have. No, it's this one. All right, so I've got that, and that's mapped to that fader number 1. So if I change it here on my phone, you can see it's going to update there in Q-SYS. All right, some of the other things in here that may be helpful. This is the no op think is what they call it. It's basically a keep alive message, and a timestamp is being sent every 30 seconds to keep that connection open. I think the connection closes if you don't have any activity within a minute's time. And then this converts it back to JSON from a JSON string. And then this breaks it out. You'll get some strings or some messages that are engine status. And then the rest of them I've got broken out here to general feedback. All right, I think that is it.